Missouri Ballot Measure Amendment 5, 2026. In regards to the House Joint Resolution 173 and 174 of the 103rd General Assembly. Submitted to qualified voters of Missouri, and the amendment repealing Section 4D and 26 of Article 10 of the Constitution of Missouri, and adopting two new sections in lieu of thereof relating to taxation. Be it resolved by the House of Representatives in the Senate concurring therein, that at the next general election to be held in the state of Missouri on Tuesday next following the first Monday of November in 2026, or at a special election to be called by the governor for the purpose there is hereby submitted to the qualified voters of this state for the adoption or rejection the following amendment to Article 10 of the Constitution of the state of Missouri. Section A, Section 4D, and 26 of Article 10, Constitution of Missouri, are repealed and two new sections adopted in lieu of, to be known as Section 4D and 26, to be read as follows. Section 4D, 1. And what this says down here is that matters enclosed in boldface brackets in the above bill is not enacted and is intended to be admitted from law. Okay? So if we see anything in these, they're not happening. Okay? It's just extra wording in there that's going to be thrown out. If it is just in boldface type, in the above bill is proposed language. This is what the language will change to. Okay, so we're going to go back to right here. Section 4D, subsection 1. In enacting any law imposing tax on or measured by income, the General Assembly may define income by reference or provisions of the laws of the United States as they may be or become effective at any time, or from time to time, whether retrospective or prospective in their operation. The General Assembly shall in such law set a rate or rates of such tax. The General Assembly may, in so defining income, make exceptions, additions, or modifications to any provisions of this law of the United States so referred to for retrospective exceptions or modifications in those provisions which are retrospective. All right, so subsection 2. Of. Come on, just give me that. That's all I want. It's right there. Subsection 2 of Section 4D. Notwithstanding any provision to this Constitution to the contrary, the General Assembly shall enact legislation to reduce and eliminate state individual income tax by requiring reductions to the top rate of the individual income tax based on revenue growth until such tax is eliminated. Upon the elimination of the individual income tax, the General Assembly shall be prohibited from enacting or imposing any state individual income tax, which means once they've gotten rid of it, it's gone. Period. They cannot bring it back without redoing all of this once again. Okay, so Section 26, subsection 1 states as follows. In order to prohibit an increase in the tax burden on the citizens of Missouri, state and local sales and use tax, or any similar transaction-based tax, shall not be expanded or impose taxes on any service or transportation that is not subject to sales, use, or similar transaction-based tax on January 1st, 2015. Which means if it is a... Let's find the little section here. On any service or transaction that was not subject to sales, use, or similar transaction-based tax on January 1st, 2015, which means it cannot have a tax added to it. If it's not taxed right now or wasn't taxed then, it can't be taxed later. Subsection 2 of Section 26 is changing to this. This is, I guess, what subsection of subsection 2? Notwithstanding any provision of this Constitution to the contrary, which means it cannot be contrary to the first subsection, including subsection 1 of this section, for the purpose of reducing and eliminating the state individual income tax and reducing local tax rates, state and local sales and use taxes, or any similar transaction-based tax may be expanded by legislation to impose taxes on transactions involving any goods or services. For the purpose of this section, the phrase "for the purpose of reducing and eliminating the state individual income tax and reducing local tax rates," with respect to legislation enacted by the General Assembly, means that the legislation expressly states the General Assembly finding that such legislation will directly lead to the reduction and elimination of the state individual income tax as provided in subsection 2 of this subsection, and will directly or indirectly lead to the reduction of local tax rates as provided in subsection 3 of this subsection. Which, did you read that right? Did you hear that right? And this will directly or indirectly lead to the reduction of local tax rates as provided in subsection 3 of this section. We'll get there. We'll get there. Okay, section 2, subsection 2. Any expansion of the state and of the sales and use tax based or increase in the state sales and use tax rate enacted for the purpose of reducing and eliminating the state individual income tax and reducing local tax rates shall be offset in the same legislation by a reduction in the top rate of individual income tax that reduces such tax revenues, less free funds by any amount that is that at least substantially equal to revenues generated by such expansion of the sales and use tax based or increase in the sales and state sales and use tax rate, and if such legislation is enacted within 5 years of the effective date of this amendment, shall not be considered new annual income for the purpose of Section 18C. No, sorry, Section 18E, right? Yes, 18E of this article, and shall be exempt from the provision of Article 4, Sections 30B, 30C, and 30D of this Constitution. Alrighty then. This is such a pain. Alright, notwithstanding any provision of this Constitution to the contrary, beginning 12 months from the effective date of legislation in which the General Assembly expands the sales and use tax base pursuant to subsection 2 of this section, Any political subdivision that imposes a sales or use tax shall, in the manner provided by law and acted by the General Assembly, make a one-time adjustment to one or more of the following rates of tax imposed by the political subdivision to reduce the amount of revenue generated thereby in an amount that is subsequently equal to 97% of the additional revenue produced by any expansion of the sales and use tax authorized by this section, which means they have to reduce one of these to match 97% of the new sales and use tax that they impose. And those are the sales and use tax rate, the levy imposed on Class 2 properties, which I believe is commercial properties, the levy imposed in subclass 1 of Class 1, the levy imposed on property in subclass 1 of Class 1, which I believe is housing, residentials, the levy imposed on all Class 1 properties in such political divisions impose a single rate of the levy on all such property, or the rate of any tax imposed on earnings. Okay. So basically what that is saying, and actually I believe I was wrong there. I think I've got it up. Where did I? Let's see. No, we're getting into the constitutionality of income tax there. Sorry, it's another video. Which, by the way, Polk versus Farmers Loan Trust and Co. 1895 ruled that income tax, as issued by the federal government, was unconstitutional at that time. They enacted Amendment 16 in 1913 to get around the court ruling. So let that sink in. The federal government enacted in 1913 an amendment to get around the 1895 court ruling that said income tax was unconstitutional. Okay, just jumping in here real quick, folks. So a quick Google search of Class 1 versus Class 2 property. Class 1, real property. This is their AI stuff talking. So residential property, land improved with structures used for intended living in a residential area, including horticultural property, land used primarily for farming, dairy, livestock, or relative activities, utility, industrial, commercial, railroad, and other properties. Tangible Class 2 is for tangible personal property, all properties that is not real property. This includes movable items such as vehicles, machinery, equipment, and other physical assets. The Constitution allows the General Assembly to further classify Class 2 and Class 3 properties. Class 3 was not mentioned, and that's it. So basically, without this amendment right here, what we're talking about today wouldn't even be a thing. But why? Why did they enact that if it was It's money. The big guys want money. That's all it is. Politicians want money. And it was led by Democrats and progressive Republicans. We'll get into that in another video. Okay. So, continuing on. Oh yes, that's right. Class 2 properties are like apartments and stuff like that, if I remember what I read correctly. I will go back and double check and correct myself if I am wrong. And then Class 1 properties are like single-family homes and farms and things like that. Does not cover commercial property unless it's apartments.
Yeah, I was wrong. Sorry, folks.
Number 2. Just remember, any of these, the sales and use taxes that they impose, they have to reduce another tax by 97% of that tax. Okay? Notwithstanding the provision subdivision of this subsection, to the contrary, no political subdivision shall adjust its local tax rates in a manner that results in any reduction in funding to any public schools within or serving such political subdivision, which means they cannot take money from schools. Money has to keep going to the schools, even if that means I'm guessing even if that means they don't get rid of the income tax. All right. All right. Notwithstanding any provision to the Constitution to the contrary, beginning 12 months from the effective date for legislation in which the General Assembly expands the sales and use tax base pursuant to subsection 2 of this section, each sales and use tax rate imposed directly by this constitution or constitution. Yeah, constitution. Sorry, words. Constitution. With exception to the rate imposed under Article 14 of this Constitution, shall in the manner provided by law enacted by General Assembly be adjusted in order to reduce the amount of tax in an amount subsequently equal to the amount of tax produced by any sales or use tax base expansion authorized by this section, or the state auditor shall be responsible for calculating the reduced rates that will go into effect as provided in this subsection. Okay. Now, look, we've only got one section left, and then that is all of this supposed article, and this isn't even changing any language. This language, this portion, you get it there. And all of this is already there. It already says all of this stuff. So to finish this off with Section B, Section B, pursuant to Chapter 116 of other applicable constitutional provisions and laws of this state, following the General Assembly to adopt ballot language for the submission of this joint resolution to the voters of the state, an officially summarily statement of this resolution shall be as follows. Shall the Missouri Constitution be amended to phase out the individual income tax based on revenue growth, reduce personal property and other local sales tax, and other local taxes and local revenue increases. Modify the sales and use tax to eliminate income tax and reduce local taxes and protect local funding for the public schools and other purposes. They are going to phase out individual income tax based on revenue growth. Does not mean they will actually succeed in getting away with it. They have to provide revenue growth at a reasonable rate. They will reduce personal and other local property, local taxes within local revenue increases. Modify sales and use taxes to eliminate income tax and reduce local taxes and protect local funding for schools and other purposes. Okay. So to my poor, simple, dumb brain, what does all this say? What does this say? There may be a lawyer out there that'll correct me on some of this, or maybe he'll say I'm spot on with my layman's terms. They are going to phase out income tax based on how much they can grow the other taxes. While they do that, as they increase the other taxes, any expansion in sales and use tax, they have to reduce one of these other taxes by 97% of the additional revenue produced. Which means anything they increase or generate with the new sales and use taxes, they have to take 97% of that and find a way to not make us pay it. Will this happen overnight? No, it's not going to be an overnight thing. This is going to take a little bit of time. I believe it says they have 5 years to accomplish this, which I think 5 years is a bit optimistic myself. Just going to take the suckling off the teat like that. You know how these politicians are about their money. In addition to removing and phasing out the individual income tax, they are also going to reduce personal property and other local taxes when local revenues increase. So, in other words, as the local sales and use taxes increase and they generate more revenue from those, they are required, based on this up here, and based on these key points, okay, earnings and property, they are required to reduce those 97% of whatever they get out of the sales and use tax. Okay? And that's pretty much, and they cannot reduce any funding for schools and other purposes. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got some homework to do as I dig a little deeper into a couple other areas of this, such as we need to get into, what do you say we go find Article 10 in the Constitution, Section 4D. Let's just see. I've got the Constitution pulled out, so let's see if we can find Article 10. Let's go back up to the content so I know what page to go to. Alright, content. So, Article 10, taxation, page 146. Where are we at? Not far enough yet. Oh, too far. All right, Article 10, taxation. In particular, we need to look at sections 4D, which is income tax laws. May incorporate federal laws by reference, rates, how set. Okay? And we also need to check out section 26, which is prohibition prohibition on new and local sales, use, and other similar transaction-based tax not subject to such tax as of January 1st, 2015. Okay. They unfortunately do not give pages for those. So we are going to have to just kind of dig our way through here. All right, here we are. There we go. And kind of ignore the extra highlighted bits here. All right. Section 4D. Income tax laws may incorporate federal laws by reference rates, House set. In earnings, any law imposing a tax on or measured by the income, the General Assembly may define income by reference to provisions of the laws of the United States as they may be or become effective at any time or from time to time, whether retrospective or prospective, in their operation. The General Assembly shall in such law set a new rate of such tax. The General Assembly may in so defining income make exceptions, additions, or modifications to any provisions of the laws of the United States so referred to, and for retrospective exceptions or modifications to those provisions which are retrospective. Okay. Okay, so that's that one, and that in this is this right here. Okay? That is that. And it is adding this right here. Notwithstanding any provision to the contrary, or notwithstanding any provision to the Constitution to the contrary, the General Assembly shall enact legislation to reduce, eliminate the state individual income tax by requiring reductions to the top rate of individual income tax based on revenue growth until such tax is eliminated. Upon the elimination of individual income tax, the General Assembly shall be prohibited from enacting or imposing any state individual income tax. Okay? Pretty much all that. So basically all this bill is doing is it's adding that section 2. It's adding subsection 2 to section 4D of Article 10. Okay, so now we need to go to section 26 of Article 10. Okay, what does section 26 of Article 10 say? Prohibition on new and local sales, use, and other similar transactions-based taxes not subject to such tax as of January 1st, 2015. In order to prohibit an increase in the tax burden on the citizens of the Missouri, state and local sales and use taxes of any similar transaction-based tax shall not be expanded to impose taxes on any service or transaction that was not subject to sales, use, or similar transaction-based tax on January 1st, 2015. That is all this section says, okay? This resolution adds in sections 2 and 3 Okay? Basically outlining how they're going to eliminate and giving them a groundwork and a time frame. Right? Notwithstanding any provision. Well, maybe not a time frame, but right here, they cannot increase this without reducing one of these equal to 97% of it. If they can't accomplish that, they can't do that. Simple. I'm probably wrong, but you know what? Somebody smarter than me. Call me out in the comments. Make your own video. Attach it to the comments. Straighten me out. Please do. Educate me. I would love to be educated. There's nothing better for a person than to continue to learn and be willing to learn. And I am always willing to learn. Now, as for the constitutionality of income tax altogether, well, I did a little digging, and I found this. Polk versus Farmers Loan and Trust Company of 1895. The Supreme Court decision that declared direct taxes on personal income unconstitutional, but was nullified when Congress ratified the 16th Amendment in 1913. What does the 16th Amendment say? The 16th Amendment says, Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes and from whatever source derived without apportionment among the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration. Without apportionment, you say. Okay. So, I just wonder, you guys are going to get to bear with me on this one real fast, because we're just going to do a really quick Google. Okay. I don't want to lose this page. We got to go to another page. I got to go over some more stuff for you guys because I don't even know what I'm talking about. I need to find out what this stuff is before I go to vote on it, and I know how difficult it is to find information, so I'm making these videos. I can blank it out. Anyways. So. What are we going to look for? Oh, yes. The 16th Amendment pre-1913. All right. Civil War income tax. The first federal income tax arrived during the Civil War, born out of desperation rather than ideology. The Revenue Act of 1861 imposed a flat 3% tax on annual incomes above $800, but it lacked any real enforcement mechanism and raised little money. Congress scrapped that approach the following year with the Revenue Act of 1862, which introduced graded rates, 3% on incomes between $600 and $10,000, and 5% on everything above that. In 1862, law also created the Office of Commissioner of Internal Revenue Service, launching the tax bureaucracy that would eventually grow from 4 employees to nearly 4,000 within a year. Congress raised rates again in 1864, pushing the top bracket to 10% on incomes over 10,000, and adding a middle tier of 7.5% on incomes between 5,000 and 10,000. These wartime taxes worked. The income tax generated roughly a quarter of Union war revenue. But the taxes were also understood as emergency measures. After the war ended, Congress gradually reduced tax rate and finally let the income tax expire in 1872. Notably, the Supreme Court weighed in before the tax disappeared in Springer versus United States in 1881. The court upheld the Civil War income tax as an exercise rather than a direct tax, meaning it did not need to be divided among the states by population. That distinction would become enormously important 14 years later. What happened 14 years later, you say? Well, 14 years later is when we get the Polk versus Farmers. And that's going to be a separate video because I'm starting to have trouble talking. My throat is hurting. And I promise I will make this video and put it out soon. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed the outdoor content, I'm sorry, but I think this is what we're going to be turning to because these are a little more important things to do than going out in the woods, having fun, and working on my garden. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed it, if it was valuable information to you, hit the like, subscribe, and I will be voting yes to eliminate income tax. Because I do agree with this. I think that a continuing, ongoing income tax for the purposes of making politicians rich, let's face it, they get a lot more money than they probably should. You were never meant to be a political career. It was never meant. You were meant to work a real job, be a real citizen, be a part of the people. You do your 4 years of service, or however few years of service, and then you go back to working as a part of the people, a part of the citizens. You go back to supporting the country, making the country go. Oh, but Justin, how did we make all our money in the country before? We had tariffs. What our president currently is trying to enact. Again, tariffs. And I believe, and I need to dig into this a little bit deeper probably, but we probably had, at least until Trump came into office, the lowest tariffs on imports in the entire world. We were basically letting people sell us stuff from outside the country for free. You know, and also, so the sales and use tax. So let's just dig a little deep on this. Let's just dig into this a little bit. So, who agrees with me that the customer is not the one that should pay the sales tax? They are not selling it. They are buying it. They are purchasing. They are purchasers, not sellers. Okay? Then the price should also be on the sticker. Like, you shouldn't be hiding that until I get to the register and then be like, oh, hey, guess what? You got to pay me an extra $10 on this $100 worth of stuff. $200, you know. I mean, how many people have gone to the grocery store on a budget? And you went through and you went with a calculator. You got your grocery list, and you're calculating it up. And then you get to the register. And you didn't account for the tax, or you didn't account enough for the tax. Gas prices have the tax included. Why can't everything else have the tax included? But that's probably a discussion for another day. Thank you guys for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was valuable information to you. If you are in need of reading this article yourself, I will include the link in the description below. And thank you. Have a good day.